Hello dear students, welcome to the lecture series on the subject botany. Today our topic is taxonomy and diversity of Liliaceae. Dear students, we all know right from the advent of human civilization, plants have played an important role in meeting out the basic necessities of human beings. These plants traditionally have been recognized under the subject taxonomy into different families. One of these families is Liliaceae, which is the topic of today's lecture. Dear students, we all know about the common and beautiful lilies or even tulips that decorate our gardens and our parks. All these plants, whether they are lilies or the tulips, they belong to the single botanical family called as Liliaceae. In today's lecture, we will be discussing these aspects of the family Liliaceae. Number 1, taxonomy. Second, systematic position. Third, phylogeny. Fourth, diversity in Liliaceae. And fifth, economic importance of the family Liliaceae. So let us start with its taxonomy. Before we will discuss the taxonomy in detail, we will first of all highlight its diagnostic features. The Liliaceae is commonly known. An informal name has been given to the family Liliaceae as lily family. This informal name of lily family is based on the type genus Lilium. The family was first established as a taxonomic category under the name, obviously, Liliaceae by A.L. de Giessu. The family members that belong to the Liliaceae, they are distinctive. They show some diagnostic features. They are perennial and are usually bulbous herbs. That means they have an underground bulb. The leaves are here either basal or caline. The inflorescence is commonly raceme, but we also see a type of inflorescence called as pseudo-umbel, or sometimes this inflorescence is reduced into a solitary flower. The ovary is a superior one. Now let us discuss the taxonomy in detail, starting with its habit. As already mentioned briefly, the members of the family Liliaceae, they are perennial herbs with underground bulbs. These herbs are often associated with steroidal saponins. The root in Liliaceae taxa are characteristically contractile ones. The stem is a modification of the stem, what we call as bulb. That means stem in Liliaceae is mostly bulbous, or sometimes in some species the stem can be in the form of a rhizome. This stem, either bulb or rhizome, it is often hairy, and these hairs are simple and not branched. The leaves in the members of family Liliaceae, they form a basal rosette. That means at the base of the herb, or sometimes they can be along the stem. In that case, these leaves are called as caline leaves. The leaves are usually alternate and they show a spiral arrangement. But in some species, these leaves also show a whorled arrangement. Common example is Lilium or even the Fritillaria. But the leaves in Liliaceae, they are without stipules. That's why we call it as exstipulate. The leaves in Liliaceae, they are usually sheathing. That means at the base, they form a sheath-like structure. But rarely we see the leaves in Liliaceae as petiolate. The leaves in the Liliaceae, they are simple and they have shapes like linear, or they can assume the shape what we call as strap. The margins are mostly entire. They have no such dissections. And the veneation is parallel. We know the parallel veneation is a characteristic feature of monocots, as Liliaceae is also a monocot. The veneations but sometimes can be reticulate, but this is an exception. Example is Procertis. Now let us discuss the floral morphology of the family Liliaceae, starting with inflorescence. The inflorescence is usually terminal, that means at the top of the herb. It can be a raceme. Commonly we see this raceme inflorescence in Lilium, or it can be reduced into a single solitary flower. We have the common example of tulips, where we have a single solitary flower, or rarely it can have an umbel-like shape, what we see in Giga. Why we call it as umbel? Umbels usually are characteristic of Apiaceae, but they are clumped in such a manner that they assume a shape of umbel, but it is not a true umbel. That's why we call it as pseudo-umbel. The flowers in Liliaceae, they are often with a well-defined stalk. That's why we call the flower as pedicellate. The flowers are associated with both bracts and bracteoles. As this Liliaceae belongs to monocots, the flowers are trimerous. Also, the flowers are bisexual and actinomorphic. But rarely we have some plant species in Liliaceae which have flowers as zygomorphic. Lastly, the flowers are also hypogynous. Now let us discuss the individual parts of the flower, starting from the outer whorl. As again already mentioned that it is a monocot, that's why we have no distinction into separate calyx and corolla, no distinction into sepals and petals. We call together this outer whorl as perianth. Perianth comprises of not sepals and petals but tepals. Tepals in Liliaceae are 6 in number, but these 6 tepals, they show a biseriate arrangement. That means they are arranged in a series of 3 plus 3. These tepals, they are free from each other. They are not fused. That's why we call them as apotepalous. And the aestivation these tepals show is imbricate. These tepals, they are often petaloid. That means they are similar to petals in their appearance. And one more feature associated with these tepals is that they are associated with spots or lines on the inner side. The nectaries are also present at the base of these showy tepals. Now, the male part of the flower, that is called as androecium. Androecium in Liliaceae again comprises of 6 stamens. Just like 6 tepals, stamens are also 6. They show a whorled arrangement and they are arranged in a whorl of 3 plus 3. That means inner whorl of 3 and outer whorl of 3 stamens. These stamens, they arise from the base of the tepals. That's why we call them as epitepalous stamens. The androecium in the case of Liliaceae shows a condition called as diplocytomonas. The filaments of each stamen, they are distinct because they are not fused together, they are free, which makes their appearance very distinct. The anthers on the top of the petals, they are paltately attached to the filament, or sometimes they can be pseudo-basifixed. We have heard about basifixed, but what is this pseudo-basifixed? In this case, the filament tip, that means the top of the filament, is surrounded by a connective tissue, but it is not adherent to this connective tissue. It is just surrounded by the connective tissue. The anthers in here are anthers, and they are characteristically tetrasporangiate. The dehiscence is longitudinal. The pollen grains are typically aperturate, and this aperturate condition is represented by monosulcate condition. This monosulcate condition we can easily see in tulipa. Now, the female part of the flower called as gynoecium. Gynoecium in Liliaceae comprises of 3 carpels, not the 6 stamens or 6 tepals, but 3 carpels only. Again, there in the case of perianth we had precondition, in the case of stamens we had precondition, but here in the case of gynoecium we have a fused condition. That's why this gynoecium is called as syncarpous gynoecium. The ovary in Liliaceae is superior and it is trilocular. In each of these locules there are many ovules. The number of these ovules per locule can range from 5 to 50. These ovules are anatropous in shape, they are bitegemic, and they are also tenuinuciliate. One more characteristic feature of Liliaceae is that the embryo sac development is tetrasporic, or we commonly call it as fritillaria type. In majority of the angiosperms, we have polygonum type of embryo sac development, but in Liliaceae, we have uniquely a type of embryo sac development called as fritillaria type. What is this fritillaria type? Here, the megagametophyte develops from all the 4 megaspores, not the single functional megaspore as we see in polygonum type. The style is here solitary and it is very simple. The stigma on the top of the style is solitary, or sometimes it can be lobed into 3 different lobes. That's why we call it as trilobed, or very rarely we can have 3 different stigmas. This stigma is papillate, elongated, and it can extend along the inner face of the style branch. In the Liliaceae, placentation is characteristically axile. Now let us discuss the fruit. In case of Liliaceae, the common fruit is capsule, a capsule called as loculicidal capsule. But rarely we see also fruit in the form of a berry. The seeds within this fruit, they are flat, they can be discoid, or they can be globose. Or in some species, these seeds can have even wings. The common example where we can say the winged seeds is the lilium. The seed testa, that means the outer covering, is without phytomelon, and the seed coat is not black. Embryo within these seeds is small, and the endosperm is with aileron and fatty oils, but the characteristic feature is that the starch is absent. Let us now discuss the pollination system in the family Liliaceae. In the case of this family, the flowers are very showy. That's why they are commonly pollinated by insects. These insects can be bees, wasps, butterflies, or even the moths. These insects, these pollinators, are attracted towards the flowers of Liliaceae for either nectar or sometimes both nectar and pollen. Now, the seed dispersal. Seeds are dispersed either by wind or by water currents. Some of the members have their fruits having an arrow-like structure, a fleshy structure. That's why they get dispersed by ants. Now let us discuss the second part of the lecture, that is systematic position of Liliaceae. Liliaceae, as already mentioned, it is a monogot. It has been classified variously by various taxonomists. Let us highlight few of the prominent classifications. Bentham and Hooker, two British botanists, famous botanists, they gave a classification for Liliaceae and recognized it under the class Monocotyledons, series Coronaria, and the order Liliates. Then Arthur Cronquist, an American taxonomist, he gave a classification under which the Liliaceae has been classified under division Magnoliophyta, class Liliopsida, subclass Lilidae, and the order again, just like Bentham Hooker, Liliates. Afterwards, Armen Takhtajan, a Russian taxonomist who gave an evolutionary classification, he recognized this family Liliaceae at the division of Magnoliophyta, class Liliopsida, but incorporated one sub-rank by the name of subclass Lilidae and one more rank superorder Dioscoroni, and the order again as the previous classification is Liliates. Dahlgren classified it under the class Liliopsida, subclass Lilidae, superorder Liliinae, and the order same as the previous classification is Liliates. Robert Thorne didn't recognize the class Magnoliopsida but recognized the class Angiospermae. That means he incorporated a class by the name of Angiospermae. Subclass same as the previous classifications like Lilidae, superorder Liliinae, and the order Liliates. Very recently, the Angiosperm phylogeny group, it is basically a collaborative group of taxonomists which is led by Peter Stevens, who is working at Missouri Botanical Garden, USA. They have proposed a rankless classification wherein there are no such taxonomic ranks what used to be in the previous classifications. They mostly are adherents of the monophyly of taxa. That's why they recognize different clades. They are recognizing this family Liliaceae under the clade monocots, then the subclade non-commelinide monocots, and the order Liliates. After discussing its systematic position, now let us discuss its phylogeny, its evolutionary relationships. The Liliaceae as a family has witnessed many changes over the recent past. The family in the past has been treated as a large group of plants. In that case, we call it as Liliaceae sensolato. Sensolato is a term that we use in taxonomy for such a group when we take a broader, a wider circumscription. However, very recently, this Liliaceae sensolato has been divided into number of separate families. Previously, many of the genera that used to be under the family Liliaceae sensolato, they have been now given their own family rank. For example, genera such as Colchicum, it has its own family by the name of Colchicaceae because they have the unique character of corms. They possess corms. One more genera by the name of Smilax. It has been also recognized as a separate family. It has been separated from Liliaceae sensolato because we have a vine habitat. These Smilax, they show a vine habitat, and the family name that has been given for this group is Smilicaceae. Even some of the genera with new families have been shifted to a separate order of aspergales. That means many families which used to be under the family Liliaceae sensu-lato, they have been not kept under the order Liliales, but they have been completely shifted to a separate order called as aspergales. For example, genera by the name of asparagus, asphodelus, ruscus, and allium. They are now recognized under separate families. These family names are like Asparagaceae. Here the characteristic feature is that the fruit is a berry. One more newly recognized family is Asphodelaceae. Here the leaves are characteristically succulent. One more newly recognized family is Ruscaceae, where we have the leaves scarious, characteristically scarious. And lastly, the family Alliaceae, where the inflorescence is a pseudo-umbel. These four families, Asparagaceae, Asphodelaceae, Ruscaceae, and Alliaceae, they have been not kept under the order Liliales, but have been shifted to a separate order Aspergales. This narrow circumscription of this family Liliaceae, what we call as Liliaceae sensu stricto. Sensu stricto is a term that is used in taxonomy when we have a narrower circumscription of a plant group. This narrow circumscription of the family Liliaceae was first proposed by Dahlgren way back in 1985. The monophyly of this Liliaceae sensu stricto has been recently confirmed by cladistic analysis of DNA characters, which was done by Chase and its co-workers in the year 1995. Within this family Liliaceae sensu stricto, the genera such as Calochortis, Prosartis, Scoliopus, Streptopus, and Tricertis, they may form a one subclade. The subclade within which the previously mentioned genera are placed. This subclade is united in being herbs with creeping rhizomes. Here they have apically divided styles and have the polygonum type of megagametophyte, not the characteristic fritillaria type of megagametophyte. What is this polygonum type of megagametophyte? Here the megagametophyte develops from a single megaspore. The remaining genera of the Liliaceae, but the Liliaceae sensu stricto, it constitutes the subclade or the subfamily Lilioideae. It is a large subclade which is characterized by bulbs or contractile roots. And in contrast to the previous subclade, here the megagametophyte shows a fritillaria type of development. That means the megagametophyte develops from not a single megaspore but 4 megaspores. The monophyly of both these subclades is supported by recently DNA-based characters. After discussing the phylogeny of family Liliaceae, now let us discuss the diversity within this family. At present, the family is represented world over by about 16 genera that have more than 600 species. Some of the species-rich genera in this family are Fritillaria, having about 100 species, Giga with 90 species, then Tulipa and Lilium, both having 80 species each. Then lastly, the Calochortis having about 65 species. Members of this family Liliaceae, they show a wide distribution. In particularly, they are distributed in the temperate regions of the northern hemisphere. The members of this family, they grow mostly as spring blooming plants. That means just at the end of the winter, when we have the onset of spring, the flowers that are blooming are mostly from the family Liliaceae. They are the spring blooming plants of many different types of grasslands, like prairies, what we see in North America, steppes, what we see in Eurasia, or even these are quite common in the mountain meadows, and also other such type of open vegetation. Members of this family Liliaceae, their center of diversity lies in the southwestern Asia up to the China. After discussing the diversity, now lastly let us highlight its economic importance. The members of the family Liliaceae, they are of huge economic importance. In particular, they are showy ornamental plants. Some of the common ornamentals that we grow everywhere in the world. The famous tulips, scientific name Tulipa. Fritillary, the scientific name Fritillaria. Lilies, the scientific name Lilium. Species by the name of trout lily, the scientific name Erythronium. Or one more common name, Mariposa lily, the scientific name Calocortis. Among these ornamental plants, the tulip is mostly cultivated throughout the temperate regions of the world. The tulip is basically a perennial bulbous plant which has showy flowers. A number of species and many hybrid cultivars of these tulips are grown in gardens or even as potted plants, or they are displayed as fresh cut flowers. These tulips are again the spring blooming perennials that grow from bulbs. In fact, today the tulip festivals are held all around the world, including the famous Tulip Time Festival in Holland. Or even in India, we have a tulip festival in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. One more ornamental plant in Liliaceae is Fritillaria, or commonly we call it as Fritillary. They have the flowers which have the shapes like they are nodding, or they have a bell shape, or they have a cup shaped flowers. And majority of these Fritillary, they are again the spring blooming. One more ornamental plant in Liliaceae is the lilies, common lilies. It forms an important group of flowering garden plants which are grown from the bulbs. Sometimes these lilies may be also grown as potted plants. A large number of ornamental hybrids have been also developed in the case of lilies. Dear students, with this we come to the end of today's lecture that was on the topic taxonomy and diversity of Liliaceae. Hope you have enjoyed today's lecture. See you again with some another topic. Till then, goodbye.